today we shall proceed to the movement of the stomach, that is, motility patterns of the stomach. But before we do that, we need to refresh our memory on the anatomical and functional divisions of the stomach. Anatomically, the stomach is divided into four regions: the fundus, the corpus, the antrum, and the pyrolus. However, when discussing physiology of the stomach, it is helpful to think of the stomach as being subdivided into two functional regions. They are the gastric reservoir and the gastric pump. The gastric reservoir, as you can see on the diagram B, extends from the fundus to the corpus, that's the body of the stomach, while the gastric pump comprises the antrum and the pyrolus. Two categories of motility patterns are found within the stomach. They are: 1, gastric relaxation; 2, peristalsis waves of contraction. The gastric relaxation is a motility pattern that is found within the region of the gastric reservoir, that's within the region of the fundus and the body. The function and the purpose of this motility pattern is to help the stomach to accommodate and store the volume of what? Of the meal. And that's why that region of the stomach is called gastric reservoir. The peristaltic waves of contraction, on the other hand, ensures that the meal is adequately mixed with digestive enzymes and properly grinded. The peristaltic waves of contraction is found within the region of the gastric pump. That's from the antrum to the pyrolus. Let's look at the gastric relaxation in details. 3 kinds of gastric relaxation has been differentiated. They are receptive, adaptive, and feedback relaxation. 1, receptive; 2, adaptive; and the last but not the least, feedback relaxation of the gastric reservoir. Just like I earlier said, that the purpose, the function of the gastric relaxation is to help the stomach to accommodate, to store the meal. This is done through the through increase in the compliance of the stomach. When the compliance is increased, the stomach is able to accommodate meal up to about 1,500 meals of the meal with very little or minimal prayer changes. This process is termed as gastric accommodation. Now, let's take a look at the receptive relaxation. The receptive relaxation usually occurs in the stomach before the meals enters into the stomach. So it is a brief relaxation taking place in the stomach while food is being chewed and swallowed. So it's a brief relaxation during chewing and swallowing. How does this operate? During chewing and swallowing, mechanoreceptors we found within the mouth and the pharynx are activated, they are stimulated, and that will induce what we call vagovagal reflex. Um, is a reflex that have both its afferent and the efferent limbs within the vagal nerve. This vagovagal reflex causes relaxation of the gastric reservoir, uh, thereby preparing the stomach to accommodate the food that will eventually enter into it after it has undergo chewing and swallowing. I've on this slide, I try to again um, reiterate on what I had earlier said. Like you can see on the slide, the picture to the um, to my left right hand side, showing receptive relaxation. You could see that mechanical stimulation of the mechanoreceptors in the mouth and in the pharynx during chewing and swallowing initiates um, an impulse that is transmitted or travels through the afferent uh, nerves of the vagus nerve to reach the vagus center. The vagus center, after integration of the uh, stimuli, in turn sends efferent impulse through the efferent uh, nerve of the vagus, reaching the gastric pump and eventually uh, causing relaxation of it. That is shown on this diagram. Okay. Adaptive relaxation. Adaptive relaxation takes place after the food, the digester, the bolus must have entered the stomach. So when the stomach is filled with food, the bolus um, activates mechano and chemoreceptors in the stomach. The stimulation and the activation of the mechano and chemoreceptors in the stomach um, elicits what we call gastric reflex. It's also a reflex that is also that had its efferent and afferent limbs within the vagus nerve. These gastrocalic reflexes causes further relaxation of the gastric reservoir in addition to the receptive relaxation. This regulation provides a prolonged storage of the digester, that is the bolus. That is, it allows the stomach to store the ingested food for a prolonged period of time until when this food are sufficiently broken down for emptying into the duodenum. There are other factors that are also involved in adaptive relaxation. They are gastrin, the presence of gastrin, the presence of certain nutrients in the small intestine additionally cause relaxation of the gastric reservoir. The last but not the least, the feedback relaxation of the stomach. Um, the feedback relaxation of the stomach usually take place when the certain nutrients found within the stomach are emptied into the duodenum. So, and the essence of this is to ensure that the rate at which the stomach empties its content into the duodenum is well adapted to the process of digestion and absorption of nutrients in the what? In the small intestine. I hope you understand that. That is the movement of the emptying of the content of the stomach, which we call gastric emptying, into the stomach must be regulated in such a way that it's adapted to the process of digestion and the absorption of nutrients in the small intestine. When the rate is high, then process of digestion and absorption of nutrients in the small intestine will also what? Decrease. That's the purpose of feedback what? Relaxation of the stomach. The receptive, adaptive, and feedback relaxation of the stomachs are both mediated by what we call NANC inhibition, non-adrenergic, non-cholinergic mechanisms. And the mediators for these non-adrenergic, non-cholinergic inhibitions are the nitric oxide, the pituitary adenylate cyclase activating peptides, vasoactive intestinal peptide, and adenosine triphosphate, all of which are released from motor pathways in the enteric nervous system. Okay, all that I've said um, is well illustrated in this what diagram. Like number one is showing receptive what relaxation, which are activated by mechanical stimulation of the mechanoreceptors in the what in the mouth and the pharynx. Um, the stimulation is transmitted to the vagus center, and then after integration in the vagus center sends what efferent what impulses through the NANSC uh, um, pathway. That's the inhibitory vagal nerves, and these inhibitory vagal nerves secrete substances like like NO and VIP, just to mention a few. These mediators causes what the receptive relaxation of the stomach ahead of what the food presently uh, undergoing chewing and what and swallowing. Number two is showing is number two represents adaptive what relaxation. As you can also see there, the presence of food, that is when the stomach is already filled, it will cause distension, and that distension will activate mechanoreceptors in the stomach. Also, nutrients that are in the stomach will also activate what? Chemoreceptors within the stomach. Afferent impulses are transmitted through the afferent vagal what? Nerves, also to reach the vagal center. These impulses are integrated in the vagal center, and efferent impulses are also what? Transmitted through the inhibitory vagal what? Fiber, and through the release of mediators such as nitric oxide and vasoactive inhibitory peptide and the likes. the gas adaptive relaxation takes place within the what? The stomach. Number three represents feedback what? Relaxation. Like I said, feedback relaxation takes place when the content of the stomach is emptied into the uh, duodenum. And the purpose of feedback relaxation is to adapt the process of digestions and absorption in the small intestine with, with gastric what? Emptying. So the presence of nutrients within the first part of the small intestine duodenum um, activates what? Um, chemoreceptors. And these chemoreceptors, the impulses at uh, the impulses activated by these chemoreceptors are transmitted also through the afferent what? Vagal what? Nerves to the to reach the vagal center, and through that